Good evening, friends and family of Seeded Harvest. Welcome again to another episode where we talk about the seeds that have been planted in my personal life and the beautiful harvest that um, myself and others get to live testament of. And so rather than just share it and walk it out in a day to day, it was always an opportunity to come and utilize social media as a platform to be able to get the message to the rest of the world. And so we have a opportunity to share a little bit about ourselves. And today I want to introduce you to our very, very brave Jessica Lightbourne of Brave U University. Jessica is a life coach, but I want to give her an opportunity to share who she is, a little bit about, or as much as she wants really, of her product, because it has been beneficial to me and my life and where I am and the seeds that have been planted and the beautiful flowers that are growing as a result of our experience and time together. And I want to turn it over to Jessica because our topic today is going to be about abuse. But I absolutely want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself and bless us with who you are.
All right. Well, good evening, Lynne. Good evening. Good morning. Good evening. Good night. I don't know where everybody's coming from to listen in today, but thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I know that it's going to be a heart to heart, and that's what I'm here for. I much prefer deep conversations than the superficial conversations, the
Of course.
meaningful ones. Um, I help people live out their dreams. I support them in getting to the root of what they truly, truly, really, truly desire. Oftentimes we hide that. Oftentimes we feel like we can't say it out loud, or sometimes we don't even know, but a lot of times we know deep down, but we're not being real. And so I take people from the VP position to the C-suite, or from feeling unworthy to feeling proud and worthy, from being fearful and anxious to being brave and wholehearted in living. And so it's really a privilege to do this work. It's the gift that keeps on giving,
Yeah.
and it's soul work. I don't always say that, but it truly is soul work. And it's interesting because I think about my ancestors, the people who came before me, were teachers and preachers and pastors, and so it makes sense that I would be doing this soul work. That I'm doing the things that are really deeply entrenched in us, the things that either give us energy or take energy away. And yeah, I just want people to live their best lives. We're worthy of it, and especially Black women. We have for from time immemorial, we have worked hard, and we haven't always been recognized, and oftentimes we have been used and abused. And it's our time. It's our time to heal. It's our time to thrive. And that's what I'm here for.
I love it. That's why I think we connect so well. We haven't known each other for long, but it feels like absolutely that we've known each other for me for quite some time, beyond the time that we have shared, because for me, we connect on that very deeper level, and it's not superficial, and it's always getting to the depth of the matter. It's not about what coulda, woulda, shoulda, but really, this is the work that needs to happen. And this is going to hurt for it to happen. However, once we get on the other side, I can assure you, because that's the conversation we've always had, that you'll see the fruits as a result of the work that's been done. And I can attest to being a product of just that, um, because I've done some work with you, right? Um,
Mm,
and I look forward to future work doing with you on a personal and a professional level. And today,
likewise.
as a result of that relationship, we had some commonalities. And so when we were building out the roster for the episodes that were coming, you were the one person that sat heavily on me as it relates to abuse because we share a story there.
Hmm.
It's not, it's very soulish. We've never talked about um, the story of the abuse, but we've talked about the healing journey of the abuse. And really, Seeded Harvest is about the hope that lies within whatever you've gone through. So today, I really want to dig deep in terms of the work that you've had to do, that I've had to do, and if we can just really have a conversation from the soul. And I'm going to continue to use that because I love it. Um, because you're right, the things and the people that came before us laid a foundation. And I'm just learning today that you come from a line of, pastors and those sorts of things. So you're continuing along that legacy of giving a message of hope for people because of what you went through. And so what was the what was the turning point for you to get to this place and space? Because I know when I was going through, I was sure I was never going to come out, that I was going to potentially die the death of this beaten and downtrodden woman that didn't have the courage, that didn't have the fight left in her to be able to get to the place where I am now. Because the one thing that was regularly told to me, not just by my abuser, but also throughout my life. So my abuser only solidified for me that you'll never amount to anything, and this is all you'll ever be. And so that, based on where my life was at the time and the experiences that I was having as a result of abuse, it felt that that would be my story. So what was the turning point for you? Because I'll share mine, but what was the turning point for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that's one of the things that perhaps, people who have been abused, women who have been abused, have in common is this voice in their head and voice externally coming to them that they are not worthy, that nobody will want them, that you're lucky to have this, all of those kinds of things, to the point where you do. I actually used to say, my soul, I felt like my soul had died and that it would never come back, similar to what you said, that I was going to die this slow death of of my I felt like I had died the slow death of myself,
Yeah,
and that was just the way it was going to be, and that sooner rather than later it was going to be over.
yeah,
um and it wasn't until there was a glimmer of hope, and it's crazy because if when I say what I'm going to say, it doesn't sound like hope, but I was living in Canada with my now ex-husband, but my husband at the time, and my daughter, who was, I think, probably 3 or 4. I think she was 4 years old. And my mother, who I was very, very close with, um, l- uh, called me on the phone and told me that she had been diagnosed with a terminal illness, that she had cancer, and that, um, yeah, and that it was very serious. It was stage 4 or something like that. And my ex-husband and I had been going back and forth. I wanted to move back home to Bermuda, and he kept on. Originally, we had agreed after we had both finished our degrees, because I was still studying law, and he was doing his PhD. We're supposed to be this power couple on the outside, right? And so, but then it was, okay, we'll move to Bermuda in a year. Okay, no, in 5 years. Oh, when we retire. The story kept on changing, and so I was like, okay, well, I'm stuck. This is it. But she called me and said she had cancer, and I said to my ex-husband, I want to go home. And with that, coupled with the fact that it was because I wanted to be with my mom, he said, okay, I understand. And it was like something in me activated as soon as he was like, okay. I just, I mean, I studied the bar with vigor. I got a job, a place to stay. Everything just spiraled in a positive way to get me the heck out of there and home to my mom and my friends and my community. Because, as you know, you become isolated from everyone. That is part of the way that the abusers are allowed to continue abusing, is because you become separated
yeah,
from anybody who might advocate for you or sort of talk some sense into you or love you enough to show you something else. And from there, moving back home, he was still in Canada. and then our relationship kind of began to dissolve through that separation. I think he realized that the control wasn't there anymore. From that place, from that one decision, and not to say that it wasn't easy. And honestly, he broke up with me once I was back in Bermuda with my daughter. He actually broke up with me, and I was, call it Stockholm syndrome, call it whatever you want. I was devastated because I was committed to the dream of always being together forever, no matter what. I made a vow, right? And but being in a place where you're experiencing love and support and dignity and kindness and um, having resources surrounding, there's you can't help but then start to heal. And it 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 was a process. I have to say it's only in the last couple of years that I've started feeling like myself again.
Wow.
And that was in I moved back to Bermuda in 2008, I think. 2008, I believe. So, over 10 years, almost. How long is that? That's a long time, right? And it's only in the last couple of years, and that's through therapy and being coached and having become a coach, and just doing the work. That's when it all shifted. And I have to say also that it was it's not as if I didn't then. What happens, I believe, when you have been a woman who has been controlled and abused is that you start showing up everywhere with a certain kind of energy, with a certain type of deference. I used to say, like, do I have like bully me written across my forehead?
I
Like,
get.
why? How do they know? I mean, now, the old Bermudian, like a
Yes.
adage, like, monkey knows which tree to climb. I was a tree that the monkey knew
Yes.
to climb. And I was like, why is it that even in my workplace, I am being treated in a way that other people aren't being treated?
Yeah.
Um, and it's not to blame myself because I don't blame it, but
So,
there is something when you are still in that space of feeling disempowered
yeah.
that people see it and then they know that you're the tree to climb. And
That's
it's now that I'm like, I'm not that tree
absolutely.
anymore. Yeah.
I love that how the world sets up the escape route for us, despite what we deem to be a trap, right? Because I fully appreciate the fact that you thought, had it not been for your mother, God bless her,
God bless her indeed.
had it not been for her very, um, the illness, there was nothing else that probably could have pulled at your heartstring to give you even the strength to say, I have to go back home. And that there was enough um, available in him of compassion to say, I understand. And so by organically, the relationship moved away because you were so far away. So he couldn't control you anymore, right? And I think that there's a way, and going back to your story, there were people who prayed for you before you even knew that you required prayer, right? And so as a result, an escape route that you didn't even know was being prepared for you had already been set all those many years ago, because there was something that knew this was going to happen and you would need,
Mm,
God forbid, it was as uncomfortable and heart wrenching as my mother has a terminal illness and I have to go home. But it was the very thing that also saved your life. So
yes,
the one that gave birth to you, saved your life.
absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
yeah, wow, you're making me want to cry. I'm like holding back tears because I know who was praying for me, my nana.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
her prayers still cover us. She's no longer with us, but
Yeah.
I know her prayers still cover us.
Absolutely.
And yes, my mother, once I finally was home and my ex broke up with me and I was devastated and it was like the worst thing ever. It was the biggest failure and shame and all of that. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And my mother was like, and there were moments where I got angry. And my mother would say, keep that anger. That's where you want to stay. Stay in the anger because the anger will fuel you. The sadness makes you want to go back, but the anger will fuel you forward.
Wow.
Yeah. And she was like, stay in that angry place because anger, we relate to anger sometimes as bad.
Yeah.
Um, but anger it's not good or bad, it's data. It's
It.
data that your boundaries have been violated
Yeah.
and that there's an injustice
I love
or
that.
that you're experiencing. And so she was like, hold on to that.
Yeah.
And I still, is still working on what does it look like to be angry because in my whole household, I wasn't allowed to be angry. Anger was not something that as a child I was able to do in a safe way. And so even now I'm like, okay, sometimes I don't even know I'm angry.
Right.
But that process of being like, actually, yes, I'm angry. I have a right to be angry. I have a right to express it in a healthy way
Yes.
so that I'm not harming myself or harming somebody else.
Absolutely.
Um, you know, the way that I used to and still do sometimes, but not as much, express my anger was to stuff it with food, right? To numb myself.
I understand that.
Um, but yeah, anger can be a gift as well. And so, yeah, my mother, God rest her soul, um, who had her own struggles um, with abuse. She saved me.
Yeah. She gave you life again for a
She
second.
gave me life again.
For the
She
second.
really did.
Yeah.
She really did.
That's something beautiful to sit with.
Yeah.
Um. So for me, it was one last thumping that actually did it for me. It was almost as though that was the very thing that needed to beat sense into my head. I had just found enough courage to, we lived together, and I found enough courage to move out. And similar to you, that courage propelled me. And like within 2 weeks, I had an apartment, I had money put aside, like this stuff that I wasn't able to gather before became so available to me. Um, I was able to fill out the paperwork. I ended up, because we lived together, I had never been out on my own. I was about 18, 19 years old by this time. And um, I had to find an apartment. And I remember someone saying to me to go to social services and they would get me housing and help me financially. So that was my avenue. The government and that those resources helped put me in a position of safety. But I got and I did it all quietly. I trusted one person, and it was actually I trusted one person. It was one of their blood relatives, and they actually told them at the 11th hour, but I had already moved out. So I remember getting a call. It was almost like the night of or the day I was moving. They got the information, but I was already gone. Like almost was able to escape in the middle of the night type thing. And I remember getting a phone call. I was going grocery shopping to be able to put food in the house, right? Because we had just moved. I had my son, and he was still a toddler. And I got a call from him to say, it'll never happen again. I promise. All of those empty promises. And I knew enough in that moment to say, because I'm still vulnerable, right? And I'm still, while I'm still going off of the adrenaline of I've been able to escape and I have some level of control, there's still very much a part of me that is very much sad, very much hurt, that I've had to force myself to be here, that I also know I need to protect me and my child, our child. However, my heart was saying something different. And I received the call and they were like, I just want to talk. And I said, okay, well, I don't think it's wise that you come to the house. And I didn't want them to know where I lived either. And so I said, I'll meet you at the grocery store and we can talk at the grocery store. So I had enough sense to say meet in a public place. But the conversation went so well, pulling at my heartstrings, that they were like, well, just let me help you carry your groceries home. And I I did. I let my guard down for that moment. And getting the groceries home, I was trapped in the house. My son was locked in a closet, and it was the worst beating I probably had ever had. But it was enough that I turned the corner and I didn't look back, and I started the process of healing. It was a lengthy process. Um, but my employer at the time was very supportive, and I had their support. So whenever they showed up, the police were called. So I had that level of community, to be able to support the process of what I was going through. And then, Women's Resource Center was very helpful to me at the time, to be able to help me navigate. And every day got a little bit easier. But someone was in my ear, um, encouraging me, telling me that I could do it, giving me the work that I needed to reinforce what I believed or I was starting to believe, even while somebody was trying to find a way to counteract that with the negative of you'll never amount to anything. And I always call her name on purpose. And at that season of my life, I feel like God has always sent women of strength and valor along the way to help me lift up my arms when I haven't been able to. And at that time, it was Catherine Duffy. Um,
Mm.
and her husband, Nick Duffy. I was working for Duffy's Daddy, and they were my employer who absolutely saved me at that point in time. I had my first haircut and had a real professional hairstyle because they encouraged not just the internal, but also the external beauty of what they saw in me. So they parented me through that process. And there was some back and forth, but it was the saving grace at that time. That was my out.
Mm.
That was my out.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you've said so many things that really resonate with me in terms of it's the community support that really saves us in the end. I think the first part is making the decision, and one of the things that you said, or just one of the things that when you've told your story is even though you met him at the grocery store, even though he came back with you and it was the worst beating you ever had, my assertion is you had already made that decision,
Yeah.
and that was reinforcement of that decision.
Yes.
And I think once you make that decision, right, once you see that glimmer of hope, I think it's I think that's all you need. That
Yeah.
taste of, oh, it's possible for
Awesome.
me. It's possible.
That's
It's
it.
possible. And once you see that possibility and you feel that feeling of, oh my God, I can be free,
Yeah.
it propels you. And it's like the universe, God, whatever you want to call it,
Yes.
comes and just ushers you into this spiral, this great spiral, this beautiful spiral of resources, hope,
That's
faith,
it. That's it.
community.
That's it.
And all you need is one, all you need, like you said, all you need is one
That's it.
person, one trusted person in your ear, in your life,
That
and
was
a
it.
lot of bravery, right? I mean, I'm not, and a lot of bravery.
It takes great courage to go through abuse and start the process to come out on the other side. But it takes just as much bravery to make the decision to turn the corner and not and know and have that one piece of faith that says you are better than this. You can do better. The world needs you. You were born with a purpose, right? Your child was born with a purpose. This can either be your prison or it can be your grace. And so for me, for you, we chose the grace and to walk through it and accept the community support and help. Because I know for me, my friends had given up because they had bailed me out. They had come to my rescue. They had, gotten the calls of cries and whatever. I'm going to leave. I'm not going to leave. I'm going to leave. I'm not going to leave. You know what? I've had enough. When you're ready and you've had enough for real, we'll be there on the other side. But as for right now, we're going to leave you be, right? And so they were there in the end. But while going through it, many were just like, I can't keep leaving my life and putting my life on pause. And I didn't understand it at the time, until I then had to be the saving grace for a loved one of mine who that I started to identify that they were being abused.
Oh,
And so I was having to make the house calls. And so you end up having to pay that debt back, if it were, right, because someone saved you many a time. And so eventually I found myself, being at the doorstep of a loved one saying, I'm here, I'll come for you, pack your clothes in my car, and dropping and leaving everything, to be able to go and save them. And it's being on the other side that it was like, wow, this is really a prison.
it is. It's a prison on every level. In your mind, in your body, in your in your thoughts, in your emotions. It's a prison, all of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, right? Ultimately, there's only so much that other people can do. Ultimately, at the end, it's the decision, the thought, the emotion inside of you that finally like changes the tide.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's interesting because I haven't thought about or talked about this in a while. And one of the things that I think is um different in the sense of your experiences, I was such a proud person that I didn't tell anyone. I didn't
Really?
tell anyone. And so I know my friend, especially one of my best friends, I know she knew because I went to visit her. I lived in Halifax and I went to visit her in Toronto, and we were just hanging out, and all of a sudden I just burst into tears. And she was like, Jess, what's going on? And I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. But I still didn't tell her. So she knew something was wrong, but she didn't know what was wrong. And
Oh,
years later, um, she, even now, like I haven't shared a lot with many people because I think part of it was the shame. Like you carry a lot of shame
right,
and guilt, and for me it was a lot of pride. Like I didn't want people to think of me that way. I mean, even,
right.
now I like having this conversation, I don't have any sense of that. But for many years I was like, I don't want people to know. Now because I'm on the other side of it, and because I know I'm worthy, period. No matter what, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
that analogy of that, $20 bill or whatever, just because it's crumpled up and stood on and put on the floor, is still $20, right? And
And
as human beings, we are worthy. Period.
and 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 the fact that we've been through what we've been through adds greater value to that $20 bill, right? Because that 20
Limited edition.
limited edition, because the story behind the person broadens your shoulders, it lifts your head, it allows you to fix your own crown and not necessarily wait for someone to fix your crown. But as a result of You have women who come along and they fix your crown anyway because that's what you attract to yourself now. That whole thing you used to say, I wonder if people used to see it across my forehead. It's because we were so devalued that like-minded people saw the sign that said, "Oh, Target, ding 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 ding, Target. That's a keeper. That's the one you want." Because our flash, we as prideful as you were letting people know anyway that you were a target. And now, because of what we've been through, coming out on the other side, we got people now see flashing lights, but it's beautiful. And so it's like, hey, Jazz, let me come and fix your crown. It's a little bit tilted today. So what's
Yes.
going on? And and when it looks like something's appearing, there's women that come along the way and say, hey, you okay today? No, no, you're not okay today. Because our pride eventually has been broken down enough to say, no, sister, I'm not okay today. Today was a rough day and I need a moment. And in that moment, that woman or that individual is able to, it's been children even for me, that can give you the sense of uplift that you need to remind you who you are, to remind you what you've been through that brought you to this place and how it is that you overcame. And it's like, oh, wait, okay, my purpose is being deferred in this moment because I'm taking a break from my life for a moment because I'm downtrodden or whatever it is. But
Yep.
okay to have those moments, but I get back up.
100%. And isn't it funny? It is the children. And you know why? Because I mean, this is very biblical and I'm not I am a Christian, but I definitely am on the spectrum of Christians. I'm probably, not at the pearly gates yet. But
I wouldn't agree.
but
You're just not
not
okay.
traditional.
Not
Exactly. And so um but what was I going to say? But isn't it, this is biblical that the children will lead us, and that we are to become like children again. And why is that? Because children don't judge, they're curious. Children don't hate, they
yeah,
love. They see our worthiness, period. And so, of course, it's the children who come and like sort of give us that glimmer of, oh, yeah, I do have a purpose. And
yeah,
oh, yeah, somebody sees me.
yeah,
And I think, one of the things that I said when we first started was, a lot of what the work that I do is ushering people to get real. And I think, getting real means being able to say, actually, no, I'm not okay, or no, I'm not coping, or, for me, the greatest gift, as I'm not calling it in again. I don't want to feel that way again, but to be humbled, to be, to hit rock bottom and feel like, oh, well, I lost everything. Oh, well, I might as well just tell the truth. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I might as well just tell the truth because what do I got to lose now?
yeah,
Right?
yeah. So, so it's interesting that you say you don't want to hit rock bottom again, but so as a part of my story, and thank you to the ladies that are listening and sharing, and they're saying, thank you, ladies, for sharing um, your journey, and I love this open and heartfelt conversation. Thank you for tuning
Mhm.
in, and we pray that it is having a meaningful place in even your heart for you to share with others for the purpose of healing hope along your journey. um, but it's interesting because I did hit rock bottom again. I actually went back to my abuser many years later. And so um, our son was about 17, and I went back because when it came back full circle, there was a part of me that said, this is fate. We've all gone our separate ways. We've healed. They appeared to be better. And I opened my heart back up again. So much so that I married them this time.
Oh,
Right? Um, However, I was in tuned enough and healed enough, still healing every day. But at that point, I was healed enough within 8 months to say, oh no, this is still very much the same person. It hadn't gotten physical, but I know in my mind I was losing my mind, and it was a different type of abuse. The abuser had just gotten more creative about how they abuse. So it was no longer physical, it was now mental and emotional. So much so that I almost checked myself into Mid Atlantic Wellness Institute because no one believed the level of manipulation that I was dealing with. And it was so subtle. And I'm speaking about it on purpose because we assume that there are many who assume that abuse is just the physical, but there's the mental and emotional abuse that comes with it that um, I'm grateful. I am so very grateful that I was healed enough to be able to tell the signs and get out because I'm now 8 months into my second marriage at the age that I was. You want to talk about shame because of our small community, but no one would have ever known what I was dealing with. And I haven't even really talked about it until now. But it's easy to get sucked back in some way, somehow, with just the right amount of words, the right amount of time and space that lapses. Um, but we're stronger than we know.
Hmm.
We're stronger than we know.
We are. And, I mean, that's the thing, right? These these men are master manipulators. And yes, the abuse doesn't start with physical abuse. It starts with mental, emotional, financial abuse,
That's
right? Sexual, all of that. Yes. Yes. And so it starts there and then they learn you. They know
oh,
exactly what to do, to
oh my
say,
gosh, yeah,
to all of those things to control you. And
yeah,
it's gradual. It's like boiling a frog. Like you don't even realize it until you're in it and it's too late.
yeah.
And so, I think of course it will happen again. The possibility of it happening again is there, especially if you think things have changed. And one of the things that you said triggered a memory for me. So my ex-husband is
Psycho
Cuban.
hijacker, someone just said. I'm sorry.
Yes, psychological hijackers. Like, and you don't even realize it, right? You don't even realize it, like the rolled eyes. Um, and you know, one of the things for me was we got married, and then I moved to Cuba and was completely isolated. No phone, no computer,
Oh,
no nothing. Um, and I could go into I had no keys to the house. Like I had
wow.
no work. I had no friends. It was a different language, different country, all of those things.
Yeah.
And that was something that I oftentimes never shared. I still don't share it a lot, but because then you're like, how the heck did I get into that situation?
True.
But
You look back.
we had been married. We got married in February. I graduated from university in May, June, was living in Cuba with him. I knew, first of all, I knew before we got married, but it was within weeks of being in Cuba that I was like, oh my God, I've made a terrible mistake.
Wow.
I've made a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
And I can think of the pivotal moment where I coulda, shoulda, woulda said, I'm out. But I was too proud.
Yeah.
I was just married like 3 months.
Right.
How could I go home and be like, this is my vow and my dream, and what will my parents say? What will my friends say? How could I go back home with my head held high? And so 10 years later, 10 years,
10. Wow.
we finally divorced. But we know. I knew when I was crying in front of my friends.
Do. Yes. But it's that courage piece again because something along life's journey said to us, we won't get out of bad situations. You're not good enough. You can't fight. or we watched it, we witnessed it. I witnessed abuse,
I witnessed it too.
right? And so it comes across as normal. On the flip side, I had a father who, for the longest while, didn't accept me. So here along comes knight in shining armor. I'm young enough and, vulnerable enough, gullible enough to be able to accept it for what it looks like and piecing all of these bits of a story together that I'm growing up in. And I become tender. And in becoming tender, I'm soft enough to fall for the manipulation. You're like the perfect. It's like soil, right? If it's the perfect temperature or environment, it's the perfect environment for that thing to grow and to manifest into something very dark. But it starts off so very beautiful, so it feels, but you
Right.
do know in your gut. Because one thing I think as women we deny too often is the intuition, the knowingness. We know we're seed carriers. We bring life into this world. We know enough to know better, but we've been beaten down by something along the way. That's why that conversation that Lisa Wingwood and I had in our very first episode was about being able to fix each other's crown, because you never know what someone else is going through and how your story is so very valuable to be able to help someone come out of their stuff. Um, and so rather than beating one another down and looking down on each other, let's just be bold enough and courageous enough to be able to fix each other's crown and just ask the very simple question, are you okay? And trust what's in you when they say yes or no, to be able to be like, no, you're not. Can we talk? Can we have a conversation? Can we build a trusting relationship in this moment to be able to grow and help you move beyond whatever you're going through? Because we could literally be saving each other's lives more often than we know.
Absolutely. We could be. And, I think about, in particular in Bermuda, I'm sure it happens everywhere, especially in small towns and small communities, but in particularly in Bermuda, we already know that so many of us have been abused sexually, um, and we hold it as secrets, right? So we already know we have a lot of secrets in our society. We are a small community. We are taught from a very young age to keep whatever's happening at home and to present ourselves as everything's great,
Listen,
right?
that that is such a toxic saying. That is so toxic. What happens in this house stays in this house.
And we're as sick as our secrets, right? No wonder we're so sick,
Yeah.
physically and mentally. No wonder we struggle so much is because we have all of these secrets. We're very afraid that, of what the impact of sharing those secrets will be. But, as I say to I go shout out to Hanifa when I go to get my eyebrows done. We always have these really cool conversations. And one time I said to her, yeah, a lot of times my clients, I don't say it to them this way, but it's kind of like you do the brave thing and you find out you didn't die, right? You think you're gonna die,
Right.
but did you die though, right? So saying like sharing it with somebody who is trusted, you feel like you're gonna die. You feel like telling this person this deep, dark secret is going to be like death. But
Yeah.
honestly, you don't die, and B, you know, a lot of times you find out, oh, me too, like them too,
Yes.
or at a minimum, that they love you.
Yeah.
Period.
And it's
That has no bearing on
none whatsoever.
anything.
None. a- And and you find more out about a person the less you hold their secrets. That, to your point, that wait, I'm not alone. That whole Me Too movement was huge because so many people realized they weren't alone. I can tell my story. I can be free from this. Wait, someone else has experienced something on the other side of this. And so I think Me Too is something that has to continue because Me Too is relative to so many things. So many.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And this is our Me Too moment, right?
It is. It is. This is definitely a Me Too moment for me because I have never publicly talked about the fact that I've survived abuse. My friends know my all of my a lot of my stories, like my dear friends do, but you know, I don't even share a lot of it with my, I don't think I've shared it with most of my family, if had anyone in my family. But one of the things that I've learned, I love Brene Brown. I don't know if you know about Brene Brown, and there's a book that she wrote called The Gifts of Imperfection, and it's really talking about courage and talking about shame. Or another word for shame is a feeling of unworthiness.
Yeah.
And what she says is you cannot heal, or put it this way, the way to heal your sense of unworthiness, the way to heal shame, the way to feel worthy is authenticity, a practice of authenticity. And so every time we find a space, she also says it doesn't mean that everybody is worthy of your vulnerability and authenticity,
Yeah.
but finding somewhere where you can be authentic and vulnerable and real heals us. It heals us. It heals our body. It heals our soul. It
Yeah.
heals our shame. And then we can show up knowing that we are worthy and tell our stories and still know that we're worthy, right?
Yes.
Because we have seen that, we didn't die when we told our story and that, in fact, the opposite happened.
That's
We
right.
realized that we are lovable, that we belong, that we are accepted, that
That's
people still want us in their lives and value us
it.
regardless of our story, no matter the
Regardless.
good, the bad, the ugly, we belong
Yeah.
because we've actually shown up fully. And I'm launching my book at the end of June, and I've got lots of stories in there. Again, lots that haven't been told,
Like,
especially not publicly. And that's one of the things that I say is, the things that we hide actually free us, and we cannot fully be loved unless we are fully shown.
I love that. Jessica, tell us the title of your book.
So the book is called The Bounce Back Handbook. You are going to save your own life.
The Bounce Back Handbook. You are going to save your own life. It is apropos for this conversation in of itself.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I've been sitting on this book for, geez, probably 7 or 8 years because I was too afraid to share these stories. And I'm strong enough now that I know that no matter whatever the backlash is for airing dirty laundry and saying what happened in the house, right? I'm strong enough to be able to handle it. And I think it's important for us to share so that people know you're not alone and that there's hope and that there are tools and techniques and communities and resources available so that you can thrive, not just survive. Because I'm not a survivor, I'm a thriver.
Ivor.
I'm a
Absolutely.
thriver. And I believe that every human being has the right to thrive.
Yes. I am always encouraged by just you as a person and the value that you bring to not just the conversation but that you bring to the universe, because you are needed in the earth. You have giftings in the earth. And I am overwhelmed and grateful by the fact that you have sat with me today, that you've sat with an unknown community that will watch this today and whenever, um, to be able to have a moment of hope as a result of our conversation, and that they walk away with tools to be able to grow from this, and that they can reach out to your website, they can pick up your book, they can heal from that journey, because you also have a journal book that is already,
Yes.
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 And that as women, that as human beings, that as our daughters and our children are coming up, that they will have this legacy somewhere to be able to pull up and say, there were women that went before me, They made it out of the gutter, if it were. They pulled up their bootstraps and they were able to start all over again and again if it was necessary. Myself, I had to start all over again that second time. But
Yeah.
because we are courageous women, because we live in authenticity, because we have the value that's needed, and we recognize that we have value in the earth, and when we show up as anything less than ourselves, we rob the earth of who we were called and purposed to be. And so we end up being grave robbers because we take all of us back to the grave, but we didn't leave anything valuable because no one ever told us. So these stories that you've shared today, that we've been able to have very much open conversation about, I'm confident that everyone that listened tonight and will listen in the future will have the tools necessary and the hope necessary to save someone. And my mantra is if this gets to one person and is able to save them from the effects of abuse, mental, emotional, physical, psychological. There's hijackers again, there's saboteurs and sabotagers in our life, that we show up as our authentic self. And so, do you have any parting words? I would like you to share your website again where people can find you, because you have an awesome, not just story, but you have an amazing gift to the world as it relates to what you do professionally. And I think that the world also needs to hear about that. So please share that information with us, and don't leave out your book title on the end. Able to go right to the end and be like, that's the name of that book. I want a copy.
Okay, yes. So you can reach me at jessicalightbourne.com. You can email me at coach@jessicalightbourne.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Bravery U University. Um, so my journal, which has been my morning and evening practice, which has been so helpful, it's such a wonderful structure for growth and transformation, is called "And the Day Came," and that refers to an Lynne quote. And the day came when it was more painful to remain tight in a bud than it was to blossom. And my mother gave me that because she saw that I was tight in a bud, and it was she was wanting me to blossom and thrive, but I was so scared and so ashamed. So, and the day came is the journal, the daily transformational journal, and then this new book, which actually you can pre-order the Kindle version already on Amazon, and then the book version, it will be coming very shortly, and it's called The Bounce Back Handbook. You are going to save your own life. And I have lots of group programs and one-on-one programs. I'm currently doing the Prosperous Entrepreneur, where it's talking about money mindset and how it's linked to your sense of worthiness. So healing that. And I have one coming up in September called It's My Time. And that's all, especially for women who are empty nesters, or people who are in a job when they're ready to jump, just really like ready to make a commitment to say, this is my time. I'm going to do what I want to do. It's time to get real.
Okay.
Um, uh, and I this is my life's work. This is my soul. This is my purpose, is to usher other people to thrive as well, because we're worth it. We're worthy of it. Period. And it's available now. It wasn't always available, but we have access to it now. And that's one of the reasons why I am releasing my book, is because I want to be able to provide access at every level. So I even do a quarterly free group session called Messy Mondays, because I want this work, this powerful work, to be accessible to every income bracket and every socioeconomic background. And so I guess my parting words, maybe that's it, right? Today's the day. Maybe today's the day you can
Good.
choose
Good. I love it.
to blossom instead of remaining tight in a bud. And I guess the other part to it is, you feel alone, but you're not alone. There's resources out there. If you are in a situation where you are, your life is at risk, whether it is your bodily life or your soul life, there are people out there your emotional life, there are people out there who are willing to help you and be there with you and support you and do and roll up their sleeves and cry and sweat and bleed with you.
Hmm.
The first step is telling someone.
Yeah, the first step is telling someone. Jessica, thank you, thank you, thank you again. Thank you for your bravery today, and having a very courageous and heartfelt conversation about your journey, um, and taking the leap. So today is the day, and it is bigger and brighter because you shared your story. And I really, really, yet again, want to thank you and thank you for our guests joining us today. And it is our hope and prayer that you will share this with others that you believe could use this heartfelt conversation that we've had tonight. And we'll continue to have, because we're women who thrive, and we're women who continue to encourage and uplift one another and hold up our arms. So bless you all. Have an amazing night, and stay tuned for To Seeded Harvest. Please tune into our page on Facebook and Instagram, as well as YouTube, to be able to catch all of our episodes as they come. We are approaching episode 10. We will take a brief break at the time when we get to 10, and we'll have information about when we will be back on live. But until then, we will see you next week with another very heartfelt topic, as we recap today. So for the last 2 weeks, we've had very meaningful conversation. Last week we talked about forgiveness, and you can go back and look at that. And today, as you know, we have talked about abuse. So next week we'll recap both of those, because at the end of it all, we had to also learn to forgive our abusers as well. And today I can very comfortably say that I pray for my abuser often, and we'll continue to do just that. So because forgiveness is empowering, and forgiveness is not for them, it's for yourself. It helps to heal you continually. So bless you all, and you all have a wonderful and blessed good night.